My name is Ethan Miller, and I'm 32 years old. 7 years ago, my entire life was destroyed by a lie. Not a misunderstanding, not a rumor, not something taken out of context. A deliberate accusation that my family accepted as truth before I was ever given the chance to speak. The person who made it was my cousin, Jenny, and the moment her words landed, I learned something I never wanted to know about the people who raised me. They didn't need evidence. They needed someone to blame. I didn't just lose relationships that year. I lost my place in the family. I lost my identity as a son, as a brother, as a husband. And what still hurts the most isn't only that they believed her. It's that not one of them ever sat me down and asked me what actually happened. At the time, my life was already moving forward. I had graduated college. I had a job lined up in a city far away from where I grew up, and I was married. My future felt planned and stable. I came from a well-off family, not wealthy in a flashy way, but secure. Tuition and supplies were paid for. The trust fund had already been transferred to my personal checking account after college expenses, and I was ready to start my adult life without needing anything else from my parents. Then one day my phone started blowing up, and instead of concern or confusion, I was hit with accusations. Jenny told my family that I had sexually assaulted her. Hearing those words attached to my name felt unreal, like my brain refused to process them because they didn't belong to me. Her story didn't even make sense. The dates didn't line up. I wasn't even in the same city when she claimed it happened. I was at work. My friends backed me immediately because they knew it was impossible for me to be anywhere near her on those dates. There were records, witnesses, and proof. But none of that mattered once my family decided Jenny was the victim. My wife left me immediately. There was no hesitation, no long conversation, no attempt to hear my side. She packed her things and walked out of my life like a switch had been flipped. The only reason I didn't lose everything financially on top of everything else was because I had a prenup in place. That piece of paper was the only thing standing between me and total financial ruin. My parents believed Jenny without question. My 2 brothers believed her. My 3 sisters believed her. Every single one of them. My grandparents were already gone by then, but I'm certain they would have believed her too. In my family, the accusation alone was enough. My side of the story was never required. The only people who didn't believe Jenny were her own parents, my uncle and aunt. They noticed almost immediately that something was wrong. Jenny's story kept changing, little details shifting every time she told it. When they started checking timelines, they found something that should have ended the entire situation instantly. I was somewhere else. I had proof. My workplace had proof. The dates were impossible. My uncle and aunt tried to bring that evidence to my parents. They begged them to slow down, to look at the facts, to ask questions. But my former family refused to listen despite the clear evidence. And what made everything feel even stranger was how quiet it all was online. There were no posts, no vague statements, no warnings to others, nothing. Complete silence. At the time, I didn't understand why. Later, my aunt told me the truth. Jenny told them to keep quiet. She knew that if anything went public, she would be caught in her lies. The police were never involved either. Jenny claimed I had connections to the police department, and that lie scared everyone enough to keep everything within the family. Ironically, that lie probably saved me from legal trouble I wasn't prepared for. It didn't save my place in the family, though. My uncle and aunt were slowly pushed out for defending me, and then the roles shifted in a way that still feels surreal to describe. My uncle and aunt became my parents. My biological parents became Jenny's. I stopped being a brother to my siblings, and Jenny became their sister. That wasn't symbolic. That was reality. I was cut off completely, blocked by my former family through phone numbers and social media like I never existed, while Jenny was pulled closer and protected. My uncle and aunt apologized to me many times for what their daughter had done to my life. I told them every time that they had nothing to apologize for. They defended me when no one else did. They tried to fix what couldn't be fixed. Eventually, I left for my job and my new city because there was nothing left for me where I came from. And this is the part most people don't expect. Once the new normal settled in, my life didn't collapse. It stabilized. Holidays and events were spent with my uncle and aunt, who refused to spend those days with my former parents after what happened. I built a successful career as an editor at a popular magazine outlet. It was a good living, and I genuinely liked my job. I was proud of myself for rebuilding my life without letting my past define me. Any updates about my former family came only through my aunt, because she quietly kept tabs on them. While my life moved forward, Jenny's didn't. She became something like a crown princess inside my parents' home. She never got a job. She never went to college. She spent her days cooped up inside, watching shows online and snacking, while my former parents spared no expense compensating her for what she claimed I had done. They even moved out of the master bedroom and gave it to her. My siblings pitched in too, trying to pay Jenny back for a lie they believed was real, and it started ruining their lives. My brother Jack took out a second mortgage just to give Jenny money, even though his income hadn't changed and his wife hated it. My aunt believes divorce is inevitable. My brother Daniel went deep into debt, taking out loans to fund everything Jenny wanted, and my aunt believes it's in the hundreds of thousands. My sisters Haley and Diane used money they had set aside for their own children's birthdays and Christmas to give it to Jenny instead, and their husbands were furious. Divorce is expected there too. Priscilla, the youngest, worked at a fast food joint just to stay close to Jenny and support her, refusing to go to college despite high grades because of familial obligations. My aunt believes that choice may have permanently damaged her future. I watched all of this from a distance, conflicted but detached. I was concerned, but I didn't feel responsible. They had made their choice 7 years ago, and they made it without ever hearing me. My uncle and aunt were my family now, and that was final. Then yesterday, my aunt called me, and I assumed it was something ordinary, maybe vacation plans. Instead, her voice had a weight to it that made my stomach tighten. She told me the truth was finally out. I demanded to know how. Jenny had been celebrating her birthday at my old home with my former family. There were a lot of gifts and a lot of alcohol. Jenny drank too much, and right there at the party, in front of everyone who destroyed me for her, she admitted she had lied about everything. She said she was jealous of how I came from a well-off family with access to money and stability, so she made up the accusation to gain sympathy and financial support. The moment the truth came out, everything collapsed. Jenny was kicked out of my old home, and my former family was left horrified by what they had done to me. Now they wanted to contact me, to apologize, to make amends, to heal the bridges they burned years ago. But they couldn't find me. I had changed my number. I had deleted my social media. I had even changed my name to honor the people who stood by me when everyone else walked away. My former family begged my aunt to give them my number, and she refused. She told them it was my decision. Then she told me something that stayed with me. She said I wouldn't be heartless if I chose to stay estranged. They made their choices, and they should live with the consequences. And now, 7 years after my life was torn apart, I'm sitting with a decision I never asked to make, wondering whether people who erased me deserve any place in the life I rebuilt without them. After my aunt told me everything, I didn't say much. I just sat there with the phone in my hand, staring at the wall, letting the weight of it all sink in. For 7 years, I had lived with the certainty that the people who raised me were gone forever, not dead, just unreachable. I had accepted that version of reality, rebuilt my life around it, and made peace with the idea that some doors don't reopen no matter how much time passes. And now, suddenly, those same people were standing on the other side of a door I had already sealed shut, knocking like nothing had happened, like the damage could be undone with apologies delivered years too late. My aunt didn't pressure me. She didn't try to guide my decision or tell me what the right thing was. She simply told me the facts. Jenny was gone from the house. My parents were devastated. My siblings were panicking, not only emotionally, but financially. Everything they had poured into Jenny, Every sacrifice they made to compensate her had finally been exposed as loyalty to a lie. And now they were left with the consequences. My parents had dipped deep into their retirement and savings accounts, leaving themselves with barely a quarter of what they once had. Daniel's debt was overwhelming, the kind that follows you for decades. Jack was staring at a mortgage he never should have taken on, with a marriage hanging by a thread. Haley and Diane were dealing with furious spouses and confused children who couldn't understand why they always came second. Priscilla had traded a future full of opportunity for a minimum wage job and a sense of obligation built on something that was never real. My aunt told me all of this, not to guilt me, but to be honest. Then she said something that surprised me. She said, "Whatever you choose, I'll support you. But don't confuse forgiveness with access. They aren't the same thing." That sentence stayed with me. For the first time since the confession, I let myself feel something close to anger. Not explosive, not dramatic, but steady and heavy. Not because Ginny had lied. I had made peace with that a long time ago. What angered me was the idea that my family only wanted me back now that the lie had collapsed and the cost of believing it had finally become unbearable. They didn't reach out because they suddenly saw me. They reached out because the structure they built around Ginny had fallen apart, and they were left standing in the wreckage, looking for something familiar to hold on to. I thought about my parents, sitting in a house that no longer felt like a sanctuary. I thought about my father, who never once picked up the phone to ask me where I was, what I was doing, or how I was surviving after my entire world imploded. I thought about my mother, who didn't hesitate to replace me, to pour her care into someone else while pretending I never existed. I thought about my siblings, who never once said, "This doesn't make sense," or "Let's hear him out," or even, "Maybe we should slow down." 7 years of silence doesn't happen by accident. It happens because silence is chosen over and over again. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept circling the same question from every angle. If I opened the door now, what exactly would I be letting back in? Would it be accountability, or would it be guilt? Would it be genuine remorse, or would it be a desperate attempt to relieve themselves of the shame they now had to live with? And if I said yes, if I gave them access again, would I be doing it because it was healthy, or because the version of me they broke 7 years ago still wanted their approval? The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. I edited articles. I answered emails. I sat in meetings. And all the while, I realized something quietly profound. My life was already full. I had stability. I had people who checked in on me without needing a crisis as an excuse. I had a family that chose me when choosing me came with consequences. Nothing in my present depended on reopening the past. The only thing that did was guilt, and guilt is not a good foundation for reconciliation. Later that day, my aunt called again. She didn't ask for my decision. She just told me my former family was unraveling. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but in the slow, painful way that happens when reality finally arrives after years of denial. My parents were arguing constantly. They were blaming each other. My siblings were blaming my parents. Everyone was trying to shift responsibility, because accepting it meant admitting they had destroyed someone innocent. Ginny had tried to reach out too, apparently, not to apologize in a meaningful way, but to explain herself, as if motivation somehow softened the impact of what she did. My aunt shut that down immediately. She told Ginny she had said enough for a lifetime. That night, I made my decision. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't fueled by spite. It was calm, clear. I realized that forgiveness, for me, didn't require reconciliation. I could accept what happened without reopening wounds that had already healed. I could acknowledge their regret without making it my responsibility to fix their lives. And most importantly, I could protect the peace I had worked so hard to build. I asked my aunt to pass along a message. Not my number, not an invitation, just words. She told them I knew the truth had come out. She told them I was relieved that the lie no longer defined me in their minds, even if it came years too late. She told them I didn't wish them harm, and I didn't take satisfaction in their suffering. But I also told her to make one thing very clear. I was not interested in reconnecting. I was not interested in rebuilding relationships that had been destroyed without my consent. And I was not responsible for helping them recover from choices they made while refusing to hear my side. According to my aunt, that message landed harder than any angry confrontation ever could have. My parents cried. My siblings were silent. There was no argument to be made, no defense left to use. The door wasn't slammed in their faces. It was simply closed, gently but firmly, with no intention of reopening. In the weeks that followed, the noise faded. There were no more attempts to reach me. No dramatic gestures, just distance. And in that distance, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not the sharp kind, but the quiet kind that settles into your bones when you realize you're finally safe from repeating the same cycle again. I still think about them sometimes. I think about what might have happened if, 7 years ago, even one person had said, "Wait." I think about how different all of our lives might look if truth had mattered more than comfort. But those thoughts don't hurt the way they used to. They don't spiral. They pass through me and move on, because my life no longer revolves around unanswered questions. What I've learned is this: being disowned didn't break me. Being believed without question broke them. And the moment the lie collapsed, it didn't restore what was lost. It only exposed the cost of choosing silence over truth. I don't hate my family. I don't even resent them the way I once did. I simply don't consider them part of my life anymore. Family, to me, is not biology. It's not shared history. It's the people who stand with you when doing so is inconvenient, uncomfortable, or unpopular. My uncle and aunt did that. They paid a price for it. And because of that, they earned a place in my life that no apology from my former family could replace. If you're listening to this and you've ever been cast out, blamed, or erased because someone else's version of events was easier to accept than the truth, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not obligated to return just because the truth finally surfaced. You are not required to fix the lives of people who broke yours while you were powerless to stop them. Closure doesn't always come from reconciliation. Sometimes it comes from choosing yourself and walking forward without dragging the past behind you. I don't know what the future holds for my former family. I hope they learn from what happened. I hope they take responsibility instead of looking for someone else to save them again. But I also know that their future is no longer my burden to carry. I already rebuilt my life once. I'm not burning it down a second time to make anyone else feel better. I'm at peace with my decision. And for the first time since all of this began, that peace feels earned. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose distance over destruction, I'd like to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? And if you've ever been put in a position where forgiveness was expected but accountability was missing, share your experience in the comments. You're not alone.